Hey everybody, welcome to Not Up for Debate. Got Randy and Damien here.
What's up, guys?
We're excited to have you guys. Today we're kind of hanging out, talking about what might shift our perspectives, what might get us on the other side of a debate, right? Recently, Randy and I have had, or at least I have, recently we've undergone some health issues that might kind of make you look at death a little bit differently. So we're kind of looking at, the here and after of paradigm shifts, I suppose.
After we die.
Yeah, after we die. Yeah, paradigm shifts. Yeah, so it's when you we're kind of talking about near death experiences, kind of situations today, and if that has shaped either Randy or I perspective on different beliefs or that kind of thing. So, I wanted to kind of dive right in there, and kind of tell you guys why we chose that. Just a few weeks ago, I ended up going to the ER with some little blood dots all over my arm and in my mouth, and I ended up being admitted to the hospital, being told you're being not strapped down to the bed, but you're going to live on this bed until we can get your platelet numbers up. My platelets were very low. Trying to, they were at 2 when I checked into the ER, 2,000. So when I say 2 or 5 or whatever number I say, I assume the 1,000 afterwards. So I was at 2,000, and then and then went to 0 the next day. I had to get a platelet transfusion. This was just within the last 2 weeks. I'm thankfully out of the hospital, obviously. And I've been excited to do the podcast. Randy's been telling me like, hey, you breathe, man. You don't have to like dive right into the podcast, but this is something I do for fun. So doing outpatient care now, my platelets are at 50K. Just, you want them to be at least 150K. So I'm still taking medicine. I'm still taking it easy at home, but the whole reason for this episode, that's what inspired this episode, is kind of talk about different experiences that Randy and I have had where we've been told like, or been shown like, whoa, we're instances away from death, and how that might have changed perspectives for us. So I have a few of those stories myself. Randy, did you? I mean, that was in a nutshell of what just happened over the last 2 weeks for me. But and
I like how you shift off it just like right away.
No, I can dive into it more, but I wanted to know if Randy, did you want to start us off, or did you?
No, I think we need to keep going with you, man. Like, but I do have instances I definitely will talk about. But I mean, the whole point of this is you talking about that moment, or that your perspective changed. So what changed? If anything, at that point. So
it'll kind of, I'll go into more health history in this case then, and I think it's really interesting to see how my reaction to different health concerns throughout my life have changed as I've gotten deeper into my faith, or changed faiths, right? So 6 years ago, I had anaphylactic shock. I was covered in hives. Went to the ER, and they had to give me tons of medicine. They had to pump me full of prednisone. Had to really calm my immune system down. My immune system was attacking itself, and they considered it. They called it, or diagnosed it, anaphylactic shock. But it's kind of anyway. I guess I don't need to debate the diagnosis. That's what the doctor said it was.
But they didn't give you the super expensive shot.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, it wasn't like they had to like hop on me and revive me right away. But it was, they had to act quickly. They did have to act quickly, and we had to. I was admitted to the hospital then, and so at the time I was LDS, right? So that didn't really. That was 6 years ago. It was a 3-day hospital stay. and then it was follow up with prednisone, for a few weeks, I think at most. That was out of all the hospital stays. That was probably the like least, outpatient care that I received afterwards. So that happened 6 years ago. And then 2 years later, I have a hemolytic anemia attack. That's what I call it anyway. Hemolytic anemia attack. Basically the same, not the same thing, but very similarly, my immune system was attacking itself. But it was attacking I believe it was my red blood cells. Anyway, my hemoglobin was dangerously low. I was experiencing jaundice. I was yellow. It was weird. I was yellow. Jaundice and extreme fatigue. Standing up out of bed was just wiped me out. Taking a shower was like a marathon for me.
Wow.
And so I ended up checking into the hospital, after being an idiot and going to work. My coworkers were like, you need to get your ass to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, or I went to my primary care actually, and she told me, yep, get to the hospital and to the ER, which is just right across the way. So I went to the ER, and that was a 9-day stint in the hospital. They admitted me right then and there. My hemoglobin levels were, I don't remember what the numbers were, but they were extremely low. You want them to be like between like 13 and 15 or something like that. And I think it was like at a 2. And I don't know what, the units or whatever are, but, really dangerously low. I ended up, in the ICU. Actually, for the anaphylactic shock, I was in the ICU as well for a day. But the hemolytic anemia, I was in the ICU for, I think, 2 or 3 days. And that was, it got a little bit humiliating. There was sponge baths involved and all that stuff. You could, I was just gone, and I remember one of the doctors coming in and saying something like, first of all, the drugs didn't help, right? But, I remember the doctor coming in and being like, I'm sure you're experiencing these symptoms, psychologically. And, she named one that I was like, yes, that is exactly how I feel. The word was doom. She's like, I'm sure you're experiencing the feeling of doom. And I was like, yes, because and this was a pivotal moment in that paradigm shift, right? Because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go to heaven or hell. I don't know if there is a heaven or hell, but I think my life is ending. It was when I was in the ICU when she said that. I feel like I'm all over the place, so apologies. But backing up, when I at first was admitted to the ER, that same stint, the hemolytic anemia. When I got to the ER, they actually misdiagnosed me, saying that I had a lymphoma, and that lymphoma cancer. As soon as I heard that is when my mind was like, I'm not am I ready to die? Do I know what's coming next? I don't. And it was the first time I had ever truly asked myself, am I going to die? Or am I going to die? And what's next?
Right.
What's going to happen? If I died tonight, obviously that wasn't a likely scenario, even if I did have lymphoma, that it was going to be that night. But in my head, I'm dying. Yeah. And then it's what, am I going to meet God tomorrow? Or what about my affairs here on earth?
How many affairs have you had?
Multiple. No, that's terrible. I'm like, let's see, I have 4 kids. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, but yeah, start seriously asking yourselves those deep questions, or I started asking myself those deep questions of, am I going to make it? What happens if I don't? Is the God of Mormonism or the God of the Bible the actual God? Is there a hateful God? Am I going to go see aliens? What happens with my energy? actually considering these things, right? And I think we can talk about it all day, but I feel like there's a difference of when you actually are put in that place of considering, oh, I almost died or I'm going to die. And now I have to look, it's, and I still don't even have the full scope on even that. Like there are people right now that are told you have 2 months or you have a month or you have whatever. So you are dying. You are going to die. And they have to, they have to consider those things until it happens. So anyway, so the ER wrong diagnosis, really made me think. And then being put in the ICU and the doctor saying, I'm sure you're experiencing feelings of doom. She came to reassure me, and she did. She's like, things are getting better. So, kind of put the doom aside, but I'm sure that's what you've been experiencing. And I was like, yeah, that's absolutely how I feel. That was a big word for me, doom. And so but I was grateful that she could place that word because I couldn't explain how I felt. So in mortal danger, so anyway, I was able to finally get out of the ICU and into the regular hospital room. In that stay, I also had a blood transfusion, in the ICU actually. And, anyway, they ended up giving me I don't remember what the name of the medicine, Robitussin or something like that. And
cough medicine.
No. It's not. Yeah, not. I know what you're. It's not Robitussin. What is it?
Well, that's Robitussin. So maybe.
So it is like it starts with an R and it like has an X and an N.
Okay.
And I don't remember what. Anyway, but they gave me that drug in the main hospital room after I had kind of gotten to the point where I could get out of the ICU. And then from there, my hemoglobin just kept steadily rising, and it's been fine ever since then. Right. But I did do outpatient follow-up for 2 years at a hematologist in Idaho. I love those guys over there at the cancer care St. Al's Cancer Care Center.
Oh,
I think.
Yeah, that's where I go.
Yeah. I really like those guys. So they did a great job. And I did 2.5 years of follow-up. So that brings me to last summer. I was telling them, hey, I'm getting ready to move to San Antonio. Do you have any connections down there at all? Like in the off chance, do you know a hematologist that I should be seeing over there? And my hematologist says, I don't have anyone specifically, but if there was anywhere in the world, and this actually amazes me today, if there's anywhere in the world that I would send you, like in the world, not just in the U.S. or, the South, in the world that I would want you to go to would be San Antonio, or just Texas in general, because they have some world-renowned hematologists. And I was like, whoa, I had no idea. I didn't know that. So anyway, and then I moved down here, and less than a year of being in here, I get my ITP diagnosis.
Yeah.
When I originally had the anaphylactic shock, so 6 years ago, I think that kind of put some perspective on like almost like I need to pay attention to my family a little bit more, kind of like towards him a little bit, but I didn't recognize that all after the anaphylactic shock incident 6 years ago. And then the hemolytic anemia, I think it was like a bam. All right. You've been doing a little bit better with the family. Maybe. I don't know if that's the case, but, like this is smack dab, pay attention kind of feeling like, is there a God or not? Or am I following that God or not? Do you believe in a God? That's, I think, when the hemolytic anemia thing happened, I think that really forced me to be like, okay, I'm paying attention now. I'm awake now. And through both of those times when I was going through anaphylactics, I would say I was active participating member of the LDS faith. When I was going through hemolytic anemia, though, I would say that I had from and this might not make sense with the things that I just said, but since the anaphylactic shock attack, I think maybe I had distanced myself a little bit more from God, and was probably more agnostic than anything. But I still really loved my family, right? Like I think I was,
right.
I think that's where focus was, but that's also a very big background in Mormonism is focus on family. So I felt maybe I was being a holier person. I don't know. But I feel like being a good person was going better for me,
right.
I suppose. But that doesn't, and this could be up for debate, right? I don't think you necessarily have to believe in a God in order to be a good person. And so that's what I'm saying. Like at that point, I think I was being a decent person, better than I was maybe, but not necessarily, submitting to God or submitting to a spiritualness. I was kind of just going through the motions of Mormonism, still playing the game kind of, but definitely more agnostic in myself. And so I think when I had that hemolytic anemia, lymphoma night, telling me that that is when I was like, holy shit, I have to figure out where I'm at with this.
Right.
And, so throughout my outpatient follow-up, of hemolytic anemia, I ended up meeting with my friends, Roy and Mary. I hope they don't mind. I'm sure they don't mind me saying their names, but they were Christian friends, that I had for years at that point, or for probably not super long, but a few years at that point. We had gotten together for lunch and dinners every now and then, and kids are the same age, and so we were friends. And they ended up asking me, like, can we bring you dinner every other Sunday and maybe go through Bible passages together while you're getting better in your outpatient therapy? I was like, heck yeah, we can. And so that led to a deeper dive into the Bible for myself. And at the same time, because I had been experiencing that doom and I needed answers, man. Like, it's people ask, why did you leave Mormonism? I needed answers, and I did what I had to do to get them. And they did not pass the test of truthfulness for me. Right. So, to put that bluntly, so I had that I have to figure this out. I have to get this taken care of, figure out where my spirituality is and what I actually internally believe. And so I studied the Bible alongside Roy and Mary, which was fantastic. And I've done it myself. I just finished the New Testament for the first time. I was pretty proud of that.
Oh, nice.
All the way through. So anyway, just the other day. And at the same time of studying the Bible with Roy and Mary and by myself, and really having these moments with God, I was simultaneously studying Mormonism, right? And I mean studying Mormonism,
right,
deeply, thoroughly, and finding that it doesn't meet my requirements, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that is a whole paradigm shift going from, and I know some people, I know that there's, and I try to be gentle in my phrasing. There is a difference, a major difference between Mormonism and Christianity. And I know that on this podcast, not up for debate. We can definitely have those conversations later, but, that is a huge paradigm shift, going, and not just from Mormonism to Christian, any religion to any religion, right? Like if I went to Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever,
right.
Doesn't matter. It'd be a huge paradigm shift. And then I would say, honestly, even politically, I ended up, throughout this, I was a little bit more of a gentler soul after this, and politically I started going in different directions, not full on. I don't know if I want to say what I am. I don't know if there's a label for it. But there's definitely things where I would used to be very, very right wing that I would go left wing on. And there are things that I might have been left wing on that I'd go a little bit more right wing on, based on, I would say, solely because of starting at that health, these health concerns that kind of pushed that forward. So, and then kind of fast forwarding to, I don't know if this fast forwarding, but going into what I've dealt with over the last couple of weeks. And this is, this has been, and I might sound like I'm preaching Christianity here. That's not necessarily what I'm doing, but it's part of my story. It's been from the moment that I checked into the hospital, because I was, we were actually recording, or Randy and I were meeting, talking about the podcast, and I was like, dude, I have these blood blisters on my arms. I have these sores in my mouth. I don't know what's going on. And, but I wasn't feeling sick at all the whole time. I just was like, this just looks wrong. So I ended up going into to ER, and they checked me out, and they're like, yep, you're staying here. You're bedridden. You can poop on a commode. That's about it. Right. That's the only standing up you're allowed to do. And that's like right next to the bed. But it's really interesting. I didn't have those questions, right? Mm-hmm. Going into the hospital, into the ER, into the hospital bed. I was like, all right, well, I'm comfortable. I also wasn't dealing with the psychological issues that one might deal with the hemolytic anemia, where there is physical changes to your body, or to your blood and all that fun stuff. So, but my psyche, my spirits, however you want to put it, was in a much safer place this time. And I 100% attribute that. I had something in my beard that whole time. Anyway, so I 100% attribute that to being, in a place where I'm much more confident in my spirituality and my relationship with a higher being. And in my situation, I obviously fully believe that's God. So. God of the Bible, Jesus Christ. So,
that's awesome.
But I think it's really cool to have that, that peace. Basically, if it was a different religion, I would not be happy for the person, but I'd be like, that it's really nice for you to find peace in this discomfort. And I mean, the whole time, it wasn't. Whereas the 9-day hospital stay before for hemolytic anemia, it was a constant thinking like I'm gonna die, and there were a couple times in the hospital where I almost did flatline. So it anyway, so that's one thing that I'm taking away from this visit is like, man, I feel so much better, even though I'm dealing with like the side effects of prednisone, which is I barely touched on earlier today, but prednisone is not a fun drug to be on. It gives me bouts of depression. It makes me ravenously hungry. And it makes me it gives me insomnia. Tons of side effects of prednisone, but I haven't really asked myself the deep questions, you know what I mean? Because I'm comforted in where I'm at. So it's, I hope I've kind of thoroughly done a good job of explaining the health, and then the spirituality changes that come alongside that.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely did. And I think you painted a good picture of why you wanted to have this conversation in the first place. But I guess why your viewpoints have changed or whatever. Like it's definitely, it's interesting to see, like my brain just wants to know, why you didn't have that comfort with the LDS, but you do now. But it's time for a break, so we really can't go into that anyways at this moment. But we could definitely follow up on that. But I think you painted a good picture. We really don't probably need too much. It just is interesting why one felt a lot more comfortable to you than another did. So, but why don't we take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue on with the conversation.
Awesome. We'll be right back.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, Randy from the podcast here. As you might have known, I'm actually a realtor in the Boise, Idaho mountain home area with Next Home Treasure Valley. If you are looking to move to this area, let me know. Send me a message, and I'd like to help you out.
Yeah, and I can vouch for Randy's real estate expertise. I lived in Boise, Caldwell, for 7 years, and he was ready to sell my house when I was ready to move for work purposes. Love the area. I 100% recommend that area as well. And Randy was right on the ball.
Thanks, Damien, man. I appreciate it. So if you go to YouTube at Randy W Real Estate, that'll take you to my videos, or you can just email me at randy@randywrealestate.com, and we can get the ball rolling. So let me know if there's anything you need. And thanks, Damien. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Randy, you remember how excited I was when I bought my house here in San Antonio?
Oh, yeah, man. You were pretty excited.
You know the one thing I didn't like?
That you were 2,000 miles away from the blue field?
The fence, Randy. The fence.
Oh.
Yeah, it was one windstorm from blowing over. That is until I was introduced to Van and Sons Fencing. Mark was able to meet with me right away and give me free quotes on different variations of how to build our fence. I eventually went with cedar pickets, treated 2x4s, and metal posts that were able to withstand winds of 120 miles per hour.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And you need that with the storms you get down there.
Right? And a year later, I'm still happy with the beautiful sturdy fence and the 2 gates that Van and Sons built for us. Mark, the owner, is actually a neighbor of mine, and he's done several fences in our neighborhood, and I can tell that they have integrity with each job. They don't cut corners, and they offer fair prices. They'll price match other reputable fence companies too.
Well, if I get my act together and actually move to San Antonio, I'll have to hit up Van and Sons Fencing. Are they on social media?
Of course, check out Van and Sons Fencing on Facebook. They have plenty of great pictures of their craftsmanship. And when you're ready, you can message them directly on Messenger or call or text Mark directly at 210-944-9238. Oh, and remember, fences make great neighbors. Hey Randy, have you ever had crack and cheese?
Well, I've had one of those. I'll let you guess which one.
Combine them, man. Just like Satisfied Food Truck did to create their delicious crack and cheese dinner. It's a handcrafted 3-cheese macaroni with buttery panko, or what they call a hood rat crumble, on top. I love the hood rat crumble.
Oh man, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, chasing it down with their Gingosaurus punch is the next step to a perfect dinner. And if you don't go for the crack and cheese, then go for the basic bird slider. I love me a good mini burger.
I mean, why not get both?
Exactly. Order the whole food truck.
How do I find them?
They're in the San Antonio area. Look up Satisfied on Facebook or at satisfied.sa on Instagram. Also, they do catering. Visit their catering website at enzosce.com. That's ENZOSCE.com.
Awesome. I'll tell them Damien sent me.
Hey guys, welcome back to Not Up for Debate. Back with Damien and Randy here. We were just discussing some of my personal paradigm shifts and what might kind of change your viewpoint from one side of a debate to another. And we're kind of talking about life-threatening situations. And so I kind of went through my health history and how that kind of changed me spiritually, politically a little bit. And I kind of wanted to go into see if Randy has some stories of valor. Yeah. Is that right? Stories. What's that word you taught me earlier, Randy?
I don't know. Let me Google. Oh, macabre.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. See if Randy has a macabre story. I don't know if that makes sense.
Which, I don't know if there's any English experts out there listening, but it's spelled macabre. And macabre, I've been told, is how it's pronounced. But then when I Google it, not Google, but Google, it says macabre is how it's pronounced. So I don't know. We're still just learning. Yeah, macabre. So I don't think I have the pivotal moment that you had. I have had brushes with death my whole life, really. When I was 2, I was at my grandma's house. My grandma had a swimming pool in the back of her house, and or in her backyard. It wasn't like built into the house. So yeah, so my grandma had a swimming pool in her backyard, and I went chasing after a ball that had fell in the water, and I fell in, and I was in there for a while, they think, before my grandma realized that it got quiet outside. She went out, she saw me floating. I had overalls on, so she grabbed the suspender parts of the overalls to pull me out of the water, and she called 911. Well, I think it was before 911, but she called the emergency, and anyways, the firemen came and resuscitated me. And they said that when my grandma pulled me out of the water, it like accidentally, but it somehow got rid of a lot of the water in my system, I guess. So they said that probably helped to sustain my life. And then for years, we would go to the fire department to drop off fruit bags because that's the only gift we can give them was fruit or it was food. Every year on the anniversary of whatever that date was, I don't recall at this time. So, like, when I was like 8 years old or something, I'm going through drawers in my grandma's house, and I had my own bedroom in my grandma's house. So when I went over there, I had my own room. Well, I'm going through the drawers, and I find this little newspaper article, and I saw my name in there, and it was an obituary. And I was like, what? And so I went to my grandma, and it was a false reporting, but somehow, I saw my own obituary. And I don't know what happened to that article. I've Googled it, and it was in the Chino Champion newspaper, and I can't find it. Like, I've looked and looked, but I remember seeing it, and my grandma was explaining to me that you were I was classified as dead for a short time, and somehow that got to the newspaper, and they thought I actually died. Wow. So it wasn't like a long one. It was just like, death from drowning type thing. Anyway, so that was my first brush with death, but obviously didn't probably change a lot of things in my viewpoint at that point. There was something you had said earlier. You talked about the fear of whether you're going to heaven or hell when you had your brush of death. And I remember when I was a child, I was a little bit older than 2, though. I don't remember how old I was, probably like 4 or 5. I remember just being one night, I don't know what came over me or whatever, but I just remember being deathly afraid I was going to hell. And I was at my grandma's house again. And, she couldn't understand, like, why are you, asking us? And I didn't know, but I just had this dread that night I was going to die and go to hell. It was, and I remember, so we called, my mom, and my mom ended up coming and get me. And I just remember watching Star Trek until I fell asleep, like the old version. But I just was like so freaking panicked about going to hell, even though everything I had known up until that point was, the Bible and Christianity and all that. And that probably had a big influence on it, to be honest with you. My little brain couldn't, I just thought I wasn't good enough, and I didn't understand, the rest of it. I just heard heaven and hell, and it was black and white, and I didn't think that I guess I was good enough at that point. I don't know. I still don't know what triggered it to this day, but, and then one more thing from your little conversation, you talked about sponge baths like it was a bad thing. I had a different experience with them, but that's all right. We'll leave it to the imagination. About a little over a year ago, I had been having trouble breathing. It was actually 4th of July a year ago. So not this last 4th of July, but the last one.
Yeah, you were helping me sell my house.
This last one I was, but this was the year before that.
Right, okay.
So COVID was like, the king at that point. That's all people were talking about. And I have this thing I pride myself on is I don't get sick. I don't get the flu. I don't get a cold. I just don't. I don't. It's a blessing, really. But right around 4th of July, my brother was coming up. My brother from another mother was coming up from California with his family. So his literal brother and his family was coming up as well to visit. And we had an Airbnb. It was a big thing. And all of a sudden, I couldn't breathe. And of course, the first thing that popped in my head was COVID. And I wasn't like scared, even though at the time, like, COVID was like looked at it like it's like a kiss of death almost. It's a totally different viewpoint now, I think. But what I was worried about is here is my brother from another mother coming up, driving 1,000 miles from California, coming to the Boise area, and all of a sudden I have COVID, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. Anyways, so I told him, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it, dude. We've all had COVID already. Like, we're good. We're not worried about it. But my brother has asthma, and he has what do you call it? A breathing, not a respirator. Maybe that's it. Not like the big one, but the one you take for breathing treatments with asthma.
Inhaler?
Not the inhaler. So it's an actual machine. But anyways, he has this machine that you do breathing treatments. If anyone has asthma, they know exactly what I'm talking about. You put the albuterol solution in there, and you sit there and breathe for 20 minutes, and it opens up your airwaves.
Like a humidifier type of?
Kind of, only it goes directly in your mouth. Like if you were to suck on a humidifier, it's like that. I don't recommend doing that, though. So, yeah.
Unless the doctor prescribes it.
Unless the doctor prescribes it. So I started doing these breathing treatments twice a day, and my lungs opened up and everything was golden. And then they left. And the next day after they left, I couldn't breathe again, and it just all came back. So I thought, well, I better go to the doctor, which I'm a head in the sand guy. I don't go to the doctor at all. Like, it wasn't my thing. But I thought, well, I don't want to die and I can't breathe, so I should go to the doctor. So it turns out it was asthma, asthma from... I had asthma when I was a child, and then it went away when I was right around 13. And I guess it had come back. We'd had a lot of fires that year. And I don't know if that triggered it or what. Something triggered it, though, and I had asthma. So the doctor put me on albuterol and Advair, which is like a steroid. You suck in this little powder stuff, and it keeps your lungs open, or your airways open. Long story short, because I had been going to the doctor, I started noticing I had blood in stool. Sorry to the listeners. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm already going to the doctor anyways, so maybe I should bring this up. So I brought it up. At the time, it was very light, and she's like, okay, we'll do a blood test and see how that goes. So the blood test came back great. Nothing was wrong. No elevated white blood count or anything. So she's like, well, the next step would be a colonoscopy. And at this point, some time had gone by. So it was like September or October at this point. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that was the end of the world at that point, was having to do a colonoscopy. And so I put it off. I was like, well, I don't want to do it around the holidays. So anyways, fast forward to March of the next year, I finally go in and this year, I finally go in and do a colonoscopy, and sure enough, they found cancer, and it was a stage 3 tumor, and then stage 1. It's called N1, which is like how deep it was into my my rectum. So it wasn't like just on the surface, but it hadn't gone all the way through yet. And then it hadn't spread at all. That kind of sucked. And I had some of those moments that you were talking about, but it wasn't like, I didn't fear death at that moment. I think it's probably like more when you were talking about thinking you had leukemia. It's something, and it's still something that kind of looms long term, but I've gone through treatment you know that I've done it, but so I had radiation and chemo, the chemo pills for 6 weeks, and then I took off like 2 months, and then I did another 12 weeks of the pills and a liquid chemo that just absolutely sucked. It's called oxaliplatin, and I still, even though I've been off of it for 2 months now, I still have the side effects really bad, and I've heard they can last up to like 4 years. So my cancer now is that they can't find any, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. But I do have what's called atypical cells or high grade dysplasia, which is usually like a precursor to cancer that they see. So my surgeon feels like there probably is cancer there somewhere, even though they can't find it. The MRIs come back clean. They did a biopsy on my 5th colonoscopy now, which I talked about. The one was like the worst thing ever. Now it's just like another Tuesday,
Just, just old hat now.
Yeah, just whatever. I don't even get like the medicine to put you to sleep anymore. Because the first time they did it, I was awake the whole time anyways. It didn't even work. And when I say colonoscopies, after that first one, they do what's really called a stigmoidoscope. So they only go in a little bit. And so it's a lot less invasive. And, the surgeon, for whatever reason, we were kind of running behind when I went in for the second time. And he's like, well, did you want to get anesthesia or whatever the medicine is they give you? And I was like, is it, because the first time, like I said, I didn't even really feel it. It just felt like I was normal. And I was like, is it worth it? And he's like, well, if the first time didn't bother you, this will be a lot less. And I'm like, all right, forget it. So I don't even get medicine or anything. I just have them do their thing. And
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. It turns out there's not a lot of people do it either. So every time I do, they'll come to me like, are you sure you don't want anything? And at this point, like I said, I've had like 4 or 5 of them. I'm like, yeah, we're good. Like it doesn't, no big deal. Because when you do get the medicine or whatever it is, you can't drive for 24 hours, and it's just like,
right.
It's not worth losing my freedom for 24 hours.
Right.
Anyways, so they're not finding cancer.
That's awesome.
But they're finding these cells. Yes, thank you, and I'm very happy with it. But but the problem is my surgeon still wants to do surgery, and he wants to cut out my rectum altogether, which is scary, and it could lead to a possible permanent colostomy bag. And so I don't want that. I'm 45. The problem is, so right now I'm a big guy. If you're just listening, I'm 400 pounds. If we have the surgery right now, there's a high risk of me having to have a permanent colostomy bag. There's a high risk that the surgery won't go well, and that they might even have to remove the back door altogether, which really sucks because I'm not married. Like I don't know. Not that I would want someone to have to deal with that for the rest of their life too, but
it's nice to have a partner in that, though.
Yeah. I just feel like that would kind of hinder the chances of that happening. Right. Anyways, so I had this decision where do I have surgery and risk that happening, or not have surgery and risk cancer that they can't see spreading. So, and that's kind of where we are right now. We're waiting to do surgery until I lose some weight. And so I'm actively working on that. I've lost like 10 pounds in the last couple weeks. But so it's a scary moment because I don't know at this point if it spreads to like my liver or something. He said there's not a lot we can do if it was to happen,
Right. So it's kind of it's kind of like you're, not that you need a paradigm shift, and not that I'm hoping for a paradigm, obviously, but it's like that maybe that could still come depending on what happens, and hopefully it doesn't. I mean, obviously that's not what I'm saying, but it's like It's interesting while we're talking about paradigm shifts. I'm like, oh, we could each currently be in the middle of one. You know what I mean? Right now.
Yeah.
Not really. So it's really interesting. And 2 to 4 years or 10 years or 20 years from now, we look back and we're like, whoa, that was a shift. So would you say out of through your current, through the chemo or the battling cancer, or any of the childhood stories, I know you said probably not the 2-year-old childhood story,
Right.
but would you say anything has shifted for you on, and I keep using the word paradigm. I don't know if that's the appropriate word, but would you say anything has shifted for you on perspective, or where you might see yourself believing one thing, but maybe you're leaning a different way now because of that you think is a direct impact?
I don't know if I've had a paradigm shift. I'm a big believer in the mind and mind over matter, as you know, but a lot of people probably don't. So the whole time, like, I'm seeing myself as healed. I'm seeing my surgeon literally tell me that it's gone. Like, that there's nothing there for us to cut out. And I feel like I got a lot of that. It just, had a little bit that didn't go through. I don't know, man. I've definitely had my moments of breaking down, for sure. But 99% of the time, I'm very positive. And yeah, I know that's not what you're looking for, but
No, that's
yeah.
okay. I was gonna say I can vouch for what you're saying too. When we've been friends I think we've been friends since about the time that I had that anaphylactic shock. Actually, so through the time that I've known you,
Right.
that has very much been your mindset is, kind of positive energy, putting that out there and like seeing it for yourself. In fact, and you know this, so it's more for the listeners, obviously. But when I went into the hospital 2 weeks ago, and I did call Randy that night, or did I text or call? Anyway, that night, and I was like, dude, it was serious enough. I'm not allowed to leave my hospital bed. So and one of the first things was see yourself through this. That your advice is see yourself through this. See yourself walking away recovered, and you were like, it might not be, because I'm definitely a little bit more, I would say, negative. I wouldn't say I'm a super negative person, but I would say that I'm not.
People like to use the term realist.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, pessimist. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say I'm like a negative energy person, but I'm definitely not a. Anyway, but I valid concerns, obviously, and
right.
Yeah, so Randy were like, don't I know this might not be what you want to hear right now, but but it totally, but it was appreciated at work, because I had kind of determined that too, being in the ER. I'm like, all right, this is old hat. I've been here before. We're gonna have a positive experience this time around, and I would say that I channeled my inner Randy, and so no, but I'm just saying I can vouch for you looking more positively and looking forward at things, and kind of like you said, you seem to be a believer in the mind. So anyway, I just wanted to vouch on that. I wasn't necessarily looking for paradigm shifts. I was just curious, like if there's anything that you've gained from it, or learned differently.
Yeah, I did, and thank you for that, by the way. But I did, right when I found out the news about the cancer, I didn't start attending church as in a physical place, but I started watching the live broadcasts from the church I used to go to in Chino, and I'm very, I don't want to use the word Christian still. Like, I don't, like, that sounds like I just like got rid of it. Like, I never got rid of Christianity. And we talked about it in a previous episode. I don't necessarily look at things the way the typical Christian does, but I'm very Christian. Like, I call myself a Christian. I believe in Jesus. And so I guess one paradigm shift, even though it was a minor one, was I started feeling seeing the need to go back to watching these broadcasts. And I have a big projector, like I've told people, a big projector screen, so I almost feel like I'm there at church. It's tough though, because I don't necessarily believe everything that's being said, but there's something comforting in going and listening to the lessons, and sometimes I listen on a different level, right? So he might be saying example A, like he's saying this, but it might be telling me something else on a different level, if that makes it, like subtext, if you will. Even though I don't think it's his intention to have subtext, I almost feel like I'm getting different views out of it. And I remember praying one time, in fact, it was while I was watching the broadcast. He had been talking about something, and he was praying, and he said, "All glory goes to God." I don't know if I ever had this conversation with you, Damien.
Yeah, I think you talked to me about this before. But I mean, obviously, it's totally
So he said, "All glory goes to God," and I remember in my head, as I heard that, I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. I've heard this a million times, but I never really thought of that. So if all glory goes to God, does that mean just the bad is left with us? Like, so only the good goes to God, so the rest of it's just us." So I'm like, well, no wonder, like, we're all depressed and sad, and so anyways, I decided to pray on it. And as I'm praying, I hear a voice. I'm not saying it was God's voice, but I hear a voice that said, "No, like, none of it belongs to you. It all is mine." Like the glory, the sadness, the everything. He didn't speculate I'm doing that. But that all belongs to God. And so, I mean, I know that could be a conversation in itself, a show in itself, just what the meaning of that might be. But I really found it enlightening. Like, it made me feel good. Like, it's like, okay, so it all, we're just here, I guess, to what's the right word? It's escaping me, but to ride the ride, if you will, to experience this life. And I think, if that is, obviously that came out of my head, not out of the Bible or whatever, but to me it felt very real when I heard that message. And it changes things. Like, it's a paradigm shift for me to think that way, that it's like, when you are feeling like trash because these thoughts come into your head or whatever, they're not really your thoughts to begin with. Like, they like I always think of that, where people are so worried about the thoughts that, like, you don't understand, Randy, I have such negative thoughts all the time. But you're not creating those thoughts. Maybe it's coming from, the rabbit hole that you've allowed yourself to go down, but you're not creating those thoughts. Thoughts just come. It's all about what we do with those thoughts when we see them. And I think that makes a big difference on people, So I know we're about out of time, and maybe that can be a show for another time. I don't know if you had any last minute questions or anything like that.
No, maybe briefly, and you can cut this out if you want to. But I'm wondering, I know you had, I think we've mentioned it in previous podcasts, actually, about maybe one, and maybe it's not a paradigm shift, but one thing that you considered a little bit heavier is children, having kids. Since going through this, is that something that you wanted to bring up or talk about at all?
Yeah, I mean, oh, you mean me getting the big freeze? Is that what you're talking about? Or
no, just okay. Like, just in general, like, just the idea, like, where you're like, oh man, I'm 45, and going through this, I need to, like, if I want to have kids, I better do it soon, kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, obviously, I definitely need, if it's going to happen, I need to do it soon. But I don't think it's changed. Okay. Like, I'll hear people on Facebook, or I'll see people on Facebook that are like, why would someone even want to bring children into the world like the way it is right now? But I think that's looking at it from their point of view, right? Like, so that in their world, they're seeing that doom and gloom,
right.
and it's just like they can't understand that. But I think, well, if we could raise kids to see the world in a lighter way, like not in a lighter, like in a candy cane world way, but you know what I'm saying? But from a positive perspective, and teach them to see, okay, this appears to be dark, but there's always light. So there's a book called The Alchemist that lots of people have read. I don't know if you ever read it. It's one of my favorites. Like I've read that book probably 100 times. And there's it's basically it's a what do you call it? Not a myth. It is a myth, but it's a like a story that I can't remember the correct term. But anyways, in that book, there's this part where it was talking about the Earth was talking to the sun, and I'm butchering this. I know I am, but it was talking about the dark place, and the sun was like, well, everywhere I go to see these dark places, I can't find them. Like, you know, people keep telling me about this dark place, but everywhere I go, it's light. And that's what I'm getting at. You know, it's like that perspective. I think if, like, right now, I feel like there's generations that are just taught that this world is just so dark and bad, and but I don't think it has to be that way. And I know I'm sounding very Pollyanna or Mr. Rogers here, but I think, man, that we need a paradigm shift for the world, you know, and you know, I know darkness will always be there. I'm not trying to sound ignorant to that fact, but I think it's also how we look at that darkness, you know. So,
right. No, I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Randy. I appreciate. Again, my health concerns kind of threw us into a whirlwind, but hopefully, we can kind of get back on track. And I know our listeners probably won't know, but we've skipped a week or two because of my health issues recording these podcasts. So hopefully, as we go along, like the timeline makes sense when we're talking about, you know, if we bring up the holidays and we're like, it's in March, we're like, what?
Which I don't think we have, but yeah. I mean, the poorly strung lights behind me, I know you can't see them right now because I have you on audio only, but like I just did a really bad job. I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even try to make those look nice. But that being said, man, like I'm very, very happy to see your health improving again, you know, so that's great. And, but yeah, I think, we've had, but that's why we record ahead. This is our 4th show and we haven't even launched yet. So, yeah, for reasons like that. So,
yeah, exactly. We come prepared, or we are trying to be prepared.
Yeah, we're trying to be prepared. We're doing our version of prepared.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess thank you guys for listening in. Hopefully you guys taken something away from this, or at least been interested in what we're talking about. If you guys would like to join in on the conversation, feel free to email contact@notupfordebate.com. The 4 is the letter.
Number.
Sorry, the number 4. Number 4. I can blame my Predno brain. But yeah, contact@notupfordebate.com. If you'd like to comment, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, we'd talk to you about your background and your belief system. Or if you have a topic you'd be interested in hearing about, feel free to reach out to us. Also check us out on notupfordebate.com. Same spelling, not up, the number 4 debate.com. Thank you guys.